Welcome to our winter edition for our wine club. In your package, when you receive it, you will find a brochure in it. And when the time comes and with your friend, you decide to open one of these bottles, please click on that QR code and join me for a tasting. This is our Estate Chardonnay Musqué 2021, and we are really happy about this wine. This is the first time ever we released this wine as a single varietal, and we did about 50 cases this year, and we're thrilled about the quality of that wine. So let me tell you a little bit of our Chard Musqué. So this is planted on our own farm. So when I say estate wine, these wines are produced on site at Adamo Estate Winery, made on site and bottled on site. So this is coming from our own vines. And Chardonnay Musqué is probably the same profile as Chardonnay, but it's much more floral, a lot more fragrance on the bouquet. So we aged that wine for 8 months in oak, French oak only, but no new oak, only like old barrels. This is to add texture and a little bit more color. Usually the Chardonnay Musqué is a little bit less golden, and you can see that in the glass. It's a little bit more on the silver notes, where the Chardonnay is more on the golden hues, let's say. So you'll find mandarin peel on the nose. This is very elegant. Sometimes Chardonnay Musqué can be very pungent, but this is well integrated. And I think because we used a little bit of oak and let it a little bit settle and age a little bit longer than I'd say most common practices. So you also have the nutty characteristic, you also have the fresh peach. Apricot is definitely there. And in the mouth, it's usually a little bit more acid-driven than the Chardonnay. So for that wine, we don't do the malolactic fermentation, which is the second fermentation that happens in the red wines and in some of the white wines, such as Chardonnay. And this is just allows the wine to keep the freshness and also the aromatics, those beautiful fragrance that you have. This is why we don't do it. So it's probably like a dry style wine that would pair perfectly with some charcuterie board or cheese platter, or if you're looking to pair it with some food, then you can do it with fish, but then you would like to have like something creamy on the side, like mashed potatoes, or use a cream base for your fish, for example. Okay, this is our legacy Malbrusco Petnat 2021. So the idea of Malbrusco came from the Adamo family, from their background, from the Italian background. So it's a contraction of Malbec and Lambrusco. Basically, Lambrusco is a very popular, typical red sparkling wine in Italy. So they wanted to have the similar things, but do it in their own way. So they decided to put it in the Legacy series, which is of our very minimal intervention category of the wines. And let me tell you a little bit about Petnat. Petnat means pétillant naturel. So it means that basically this is the most ancestral way to make sparkling wine. This is like, we're talking about 17th century, like way back. And basically they didn't know how to make wine back in the days, and basically because of the very cold summer, the fermentation would stop, and they would say, oh, okay, the wine is ready, we're going to put it into bottle. But then what happened in the spring, when the temperature rise, the fermentation restarted in the bottles, and then the wine were sparkly. So nowadays, Petnat are back in the front of the scene of the winemaking industry, and they are very trendy because of their natural way of how they are made. So because we bottled them and they finish the fermentation inside the bottle, you'll observe usually there is a sediment inside the bottle, which is total normal. It's just dead yeast. But that might cause the bottle, when you open it, to fizz a little bit and overflow. So just when you open that, it's very red and it can taint your couch, so probably open it in your kitchen. This bottle is completely fine. They're usually fine, but there is always a risk. So, and then because it's a red wine, you can choose either or to chill it or not. I recommend that you put it in the fridge at least 30 minutes before you drink it, because it's always nice when bubbles are a little bit cold. Because it's a red wine, I wouldn't recommend to drink it as cold as a, for example, traditional sparkling method or a white sparkling wine. So you can see it's very dark. The Malbec that we use for that particular wine has a lot of color in the skin. And it's very floral. You can smell violets, red plum, ripe cherries, ripe strawberries. It's very nice. It's a very nice Christmas wine because it's red wine, but it's also sparkling, so you can sit near the fireplace and enjoy that wine without any food, and it's totally fine. Or if you want to pair it, I actually opened myself a bottle like that, and I had it with a beef roast and potatoes, and it was fantastic. Everyone loved it. It's delicious. It's juicy. It's very light. You almost barely feel the tannins. It's drinking really well. Yeah, it's a beautiful wine to have on its own. This is our Legacy Roussanne Viognier Marsanne 2019. So this is always a name that is tricky to pronounce because it's 3 varietals, and the first one starts with an R, which I know it's tricky. But those are 3 varietals from south of France, originally planted there, that you can find mostly in the appellation Côte du Rhône. That's where they're originally from. We're lucky to have these in Niagara, and this blend is usually very nice, very floral, and the Viognier is one of the less acid white wine grapes that you can find. So let me give you a tip. When you find a bottle that is waxed at the top, you don't have to worry about using the knife on the corkscrew. You just go directly through it, and that's the easiest way and the cleanest way to open a bottle with the wax. Because the wax, you see, just breaks right there, and then that saves you the hassle, and it's also safer. A lot of people cut themselves trying to open a bottle with wax, so that's a little bit of a health and safety tip here. So this is in our Legacy series. So our Legacy series are very hands-off in terms of winemaking. So these grapes didn't receive any yeast or any winemaking product addition during the process. So this has been wild fermented. When I say wild fermented, it means that we didn't add selected yeast in our process to do the fermentation. The fermentation happens constantly. We do age this wine in oak, and it's beautiful. It is open on like some vanilla aroma, very fresh and ripe pear, like Niagara peach, like a juicy ripe in the summer. It's beautiful. Very well balanced, elegant. So this is a white wine that is like considered as full body. So if you look in the glass, when you taste the wines, a lot of people ask me, oh, what about the legs? So the legs are an indication on the alcohol level, the sugar level, and also what we call the glycerol level. So the slower and the bigger they get, and down the glass, usually like the more full-bodied the white wine is. So because of that soft acidity, the best way to pair this wine for me is like when you do like a fish in the oven. with like a little bit of the vegetables. When you wrap your fish in the foil and then you put the vegetable, put it in the oven, that's a perfect example to pair with. This is our Cabernet Franc 2015 from the Foxcroft vineyard. We love that vineyard. This is one of the best vineyards in Niagara to grow Cabernet Franc, to be honest. And this is vintage 2015. It's pulled out from our library, especially for you for this Christmas. So let's talk about what is a library and how do we use it as winemaker. So a library is basically a snapshot or like a reserve of wine that we held on to come back later on and assess the wines. So for example, we knew that 2015 was a great vintage, but now that we are in 2022, can we taste that wine again and say, oh, we thought that it would age 8 years, but it has like another 5 years to go. So basically it would age 13 years. So this is the information that it gives to us to have a library. We come back to the wines later in time to assess our decision at winemaker at the time that we made. This is one of the trickiest part of our job, is to decide things that will impact a wine that you will drink in 5 years' time. Like, who knows what's gonna happen? And every time it's a guess, but the library it's a tool for us to adjust our decision-making tools. So Cabernet Franc, this is a single varietal wine. So it means inside that bottles, it's only wine coming from the Cabernet Franc varietals and only from that Foxcroft vineyard. We love Cabernet Franc because it's a mix of like ripe red fruit, but it also has the freshness. There is also always a little bit of the freshness in the Cabernet Franc. And you can see the color, it's beautiful. It's still deep red Grenat. There is not a lot of sign of evolution or oxidation. Oh yeah, you can basically keep that another 5 years in your cellar easy, which is fantastic. And for now you have like ripe strawberries, some cocoa notes, you a little bit like herbal tones, like cooking herbs, like basically thyme or rosemary. It's discreet, but it's there, and that's what I call freshness. These are those type of aromas that you can try to find when you smell the wine. And this is beautifully balanced. This is a full body wine, which means like there is a lot of tannins, very good tannins. They're silky, which means like they're very fine. Like you can feel them in your tongue, but they're not bitter. They're well integrated into the wine. You only feel them at the end. It's very well balanced. The acidity is here, but it's blended into the meat palate. You can still chew on the aromas after. So that's what we call when we say the wine is lingers or is lingering, is it when you still perceive the aromas when you swallow the wine, like a couple seconds after. So this will pair perfectly with anything that is like a little bit more heavy in fat, so like a T-bone or a sirloin steak, or anything gamey would really fit that. And we are starting with Blanc de Blanc 2017. So as a tip, you can pop the cork if you want or not, it depends. If you're in a restaurant and you hear the cork pop, then it's usually not good because they are supposed to open the bottle in silence. Those are like sommelier rules. But here we're having fun, so we pop the cork. So let me talk to you about what is Blanc de Blanc means. This means this is a traditional sparkling method and it's made of 100% Chardonnay. This is what means when you read on the label Blanc de Blanc, and then the vintage is 2017. You can read Blanc de Noir and it means that it's from Pinot Noir. So those are the two main principal varieties used in traditional sparkling method. So to make this wine, we usually first make a base wine. So we make like a white wine, and then we age it in oak, in French oak barrel, for about 4 to 6 months. And then we add more sugar and more yeast, and then we bottle that really quickly. So the second fermentation happens in the bottles, and that's how you have the bubbles in the bottle. Basically, the yeast eat the sugar, transform it into alcohol inside the bottle where they are trapped, and the gas is trapped inside the wine. That's how you get the bubbles. And as a fact, a bottle of sparkling traditional metal holds about 5.5 bar of pressure inside it. So that's quite a cool fact. So about the tasting notes, this vintage 2017 is still really fresh. I can smell notes of pear, green apple, and you also have the nutty characteristic coming into. So this is coming from the age in the bottle, but also from the oak part of the aging. This wine is still full of nice acidity. You can either drink that now for Christmas, or you can put it in your cellar and cellar it for another 2, 3, 5 years without any issue. And often people ask me, like, how do you tell, like, how do you know how a wine will age, or if I have to drink it now? Basically, one of the easiest tips is to assess the acidity of the wine. If the acidity is still very alive and you feel the freshness of the wine, then there is a good sign here for you to know that you can keep that wine in your cellar. There are other parameters that it's a little bit more complex than that, but that's the easiest part for like you to know randomly, can I keep that wine, or should I have to drink my 6 bottles that I've aged for 5 years? So this would pair perfectly with oysters or seafood platter, for example, at the beginning of your meal. Okay, this is our Pinot Noir 2017 from the Lowry Vineyard, and this one is our wild ferment Pinot Noir. So for this particular wine, we decided at the time, because the vintage condition was really ideal, to select a few barrels that we thought were the best barrel, and they were fermented wild, so we didn't add any selected yeast in those barrels. And these had like 45% new oak, so a higher new oak proportion than what you would find in the usual Lowry Pinot Noir series. So how does oak impact the wine? Like, let's talk a little bit about that. So the new oak, as winemaker, when you look at new oak, we look at what that will and how will that impact the wine. So usually when we choose new oak, it will impact in the flavor profile. So it will enhance the aromas of vanilla, cinnamon, breadcrumbs, brioche, everything that is around that, cocoa. But it will also give body to the wine. So it's a matter of like how we balance things. We want body into the wine, but we don't want only vanilla. So how you gauge that? But when you have a higher quality of the wine, then the integration of that oak is usually better. So that's why in that wine we decided, yes, we can go higher because it will integrate well. And it did. You can smell the influence of the oak, but the first thing that you smell is the fruit, not those notes of vanilla or cocoa that I just described. So this is really well. These can be cellared for another 2 to 3 years easily. So you can choose to drink it now or put it in your cellar and then open it in 2 years, no problem. I can smell the red cherries. There is a little bit of licorice, some notes of leather, some notes of cacao, but everything is well blended. In the palate, you can feel that richness that I just described. You can also feel there is like a little bit more tannin than on our regular Lowry Pinot Noir. This also comes from the new oak. So another use of the oak as winemaker is the addition or the integration of other tannins. With the tannins, it's the little grippy things that you can feel on the top of your tongue when you drink red wine. So this would pair easily with mushroom risotto, but also with, like, for example, like a pork roast. Everything that is like white meat and that you want to roast in the oven, or if you were like fish, more fish orientated, then you can pair that with salmon easily.